It looks like we are right at about 2 o'clock. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And as people continue to join, that's fantastic. We'll just welcome them just as we welcomed you. So hello and welcome to our third virtual culinary training. I can't believe it's the third. But we've been doing virtual trainings this year, of course, because of COVID. And each one that we've done has been a little bit different, a little bit unique and fun. And we are excited to welcome you to the third one. I'd like to introduce myself and the team. My name is Jessica Vicinski. I'm a child nutrition specialist with ODE's child nutrition programs. And the culinary trainings, if you haven't been a part of them before, are actually a partnership between ODE and the Oregon Dairy and Nutrition Council, or ODNC. And my counterpart from ODNC is Crista Hawkins, and she's steering us today in our Zoom webinar. So thanks to Crista for that. And then our team is also comprised of 2 other child nutrition specialists, Jenny Kolpak and Chris Davison, both of whom are specialists on our school team, and both of whom are former food service directors from school districts. So we're excited to have them on as well. They add a lot of information. They've done some handouts for us, and they're going to be speaking a little bit later in the program. So we have a packed agenda. As many of you are doing, please feel free to introduce yourself. Go ahead and type your name, your organization or school district into the chat feature. I think one of the best things about these culinary trainings is that they bring together such a diverse group of sponsors and partners, and it allows for great conversation. And we really want to encourage that conversation. So please use that chat feature. You can discuss recipes that I'm talking about or topics that we touch on, ask questions, or just kind of have some side conversations about the topics we're discussing today. We really want to encourage that. And our team is going to be posting some links into the chat, as well as some conversation starters to maybe get the ball rolling. So we appreciate you being here and saying hello. To talk a little bit about today's topic for the training, I'm going to be absolutely honest. This is the honest space. When it came to this session, time got away from us, and we may be flying a little bit by the seat of our pants. As it came to planning, our team realized that we had a lot going on, a lot of projects, a lot of things that were taking priority. Things were stacking up, and we felt like we were running from one thing to another, and we didn't really have time to stop and breathe and plan. But that actually started us thinking. And the reality is that y'all have been dealing and are continuing to deal with that same sort of situation. I mean, let's be honest, for the past 2 years, and really even longer than that. So that sort of got us on the path of where we're going to head today. Thinking about sponsors, generally, as you move into a new school year or a new program year, you start to plan. You maybe plan your menu. Maybe you do a cycle menu. Think about the recipes you're going to do, get those together. Maybe you determine the inventory you have and what you need to purchase along the way. You really start to plan out and forecast moving into that year. 2020, though, has provided us another layer of frustration on a already mountain high stack of frustration flapjacks. And that is supply chain. and the supply chain issues that many are probably experiencing, that we've heard about on the news and through third-party entities and associations. That supply chain is the mechanism that we rely on to bring us the things we need, to make the things we need to make to serve those participants that it's our job to serve. And so even if we've planned, even if we have determined those recipes, and even if we've ordered those items, it is a very real possibility this year that there's a potential that something won't arrive, that something won't be delivered. And so that's where we're moving with the topic today. But before I get into our theme, we have 2 polls that we'd like to get a little bit more information from you on. And it does have to do with supply chain. And Jenny is actually going to be running our polls today. So Jenny, I'm going to have you launch our polls if you could, and we'll see how people are doing with supply chain.
Great, thank you, Jessica. So this is our first poll. The question is, are you having challenges or trouble meeting the meal pattern requirements due to supply shortages? First answer is yes, lots. I'm totally stressed. Second answer is yes, a few, yet manageable. And the third answer is no, everything's great. And so I'm going to give about a minute for everyone to answer that poll, and then I will share the results.
Awesome.
And it looks like we just have a few more people to answer it. We have 22 answers. Of course, you don't have to answer it at all, but I will close it in 10 seconds. Okay. And as you can see,
right,
everyone is leaning to being right here in the middle. Yes,
I like it.
Yet it's manageable. So that is great news to hear. And thank you everyone for sharing with us. And we have a few people that said, no, everything's great. So there's no one in that totally stressed out category. I love it.
These people are soldiers. All right, we got one more, I think.
So part 2 of this poll is, what components are you having supply chain challenges with? Is it fruit, vegetables, grains, dairy, meat, and meat alternates? Okay. And the results show, fruit is the highest, 41%.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the meat alternative component is less people are struggling getting that component. So, but a good kind of across the board struggle with all components overall.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks, Jessica.
It also looks like people are having issues getting things on time, delayed deliveries, maybe they're pushing orders back. We've definitely heard that before as well. So it's really great for us to hear what's going on. Of course, we get maybe second or third hand information, but to hear from those people that are really experiencing it firsthand is fantastic. I'm glad that all of you are managing well. I had no doubt with our child nutrition program, food service staff and directors, y'all are very stalwart. And you are able to be flexible. And really, that's kind of what child nutrition programs are all about, right? It's about being flexible. We've always had to do that. We've had to adapt when needed. But it feels like 2020, 2021 is really taking that flexibility to another level, like Gumby flexibility. Hopefully you remember who Gumby was. Otherwise, that joke just fell flat. But that kind of brings us to our topic that we want to discuss today. And our theme or our title is Remain Calm and Keep Cooking. puns intended all around. I'm not even going to use the romaine, but that's our title. And what we really want to focus on today is being flexible. And then planning for flexibility. And you might ask, can you plan for flexibility? Absolutely. We also, because our series this year has focused on portability, we know that many people continue to do grab and go, potentially do meals in classrooms or in smaller spaces where things need to be portable. We're going to loop that in. And then finally, we've been talking about flavor profiles throughout this series and how different flavor profiles can change up a whole dish, can add spice, pun again, to a menu or to a recipe. So we're going to take all of those and we're going to put it into today's training, and we're looking at meal bowls. And meal bowls are not necessarily a new trend, but they're definitely something that's portable, something that's kind of fun to do, and a great way to look at planning for flexibility. Now, we sent out the participant handbook yesterday. Hopefully, everyone received it. And if you didn't, that's okay. You're not going to be needing really to use it during the training. We'll have everything you need on the screen. But we will also send a follow-up email with a link to that handbook if it got to your spam or something. I do want to point out 2 different handouts that we'll be working through and that we hope will be a huge resource to you after this training. The first, I'm going to go is a handout that Jenny made. Thank you, Jenny. And it's basically the basic anatomy of a bowl. We've got basic anatomy of a bowl and then basic anatomy of a breakfast bowl. And these are what we're going to go through and how you plan items or menus to incorporate flexibility. So we hope that these will be resources and that you can even use them as planning tools. There's spaces where you can add other items and maybe use this in your kitchens or organizations. The second in our packet starts on page 4, and it's actually make your own seasonings blend. Thank you, Crista. Handout. And I will highly, highly encourage all of you to create a playlist of seasoning blends. Seasoning blends we've talked about throughout this series. They're not hard to do. This handout gives you what's included and how many parts for each item. I would suggest putting a batch together that's more than you need for one recipe. You can put a seasoning blend in an airtight container, store it in a cool, dry location, and it will last you up to 3 months. And you can use that over and over. It's a great way to add a little something different to your menu. Let's say the only thing you're able to get on time is chicken, and you have to serve chicken 4 days in a row. A different seasoning blend, a different flavor profile is going to mix it up and will make it seem something different than what they received the day before. So make that playlist of seasoning blends. That's step 1 in being flexible. All right. Now I have a PowerPoint that I am going to share as we get started with this training. All right. So hopefully everybody can see that. Looks like it. Okay. So when we're looking at creating or planning for flexibility, when we're dealing with meal bowls, the meal bowls I'm going to talk about today, the first ones are going to be maybe for lunch or supper, and it will incorporate about 3 components of your meal pattern. As we all know, a lunch or supper meal pattern, we have 5 components that we need to include to make a reimbursable meal. So the meal bowls will probably include your grain component, your meat alternate component, and your vegetable component. So I want to make sure that I put a plug in and say the meal bowl is part of it, but of course, always include fruit, your milk, and then you'll have your fully reimbursable meal. So let's get started. As you're planning, when you're thinking about meal bowls or any sort of recipes, you want to think about a plug and play kind of system. So if something else is not available, what else can I plug into that spot to make it work, to make this meal reimbursable or make it work for the participants? So we've included recipes in your handbook, but I really want you to use these recipes sort of as a guide. They will coincide with the meal bowls I'm going to put together today. But again, everything right now is about flexibility and about thinking ahead of time how you can adjust, how you can, one of our least favorite words, pivot, or how you can turn to make it work if something happens, potentially with supply chain. Okay, so let's just get started. Let's say you've decided you're gonna do maybe like a stir fry bowl, and you've got some whole grain noodles. And to that, you're gonna add some chicken. So we've got some diced chicken. And then you wanna add some veggies. And so we're gonna do maybe some red bell pepper, lots of color, and we're gonna do some carrots, right? So on my slide, I'm gonna show you, we've got our whole grain rich spaghetti, our chicken, we've added some veggies, and now we want our flavor inspiration to kick it up. And we're gonna do, as I said, Asian inspired. So that could be things like soy or ginger, garlic, maybe even rice vinegar. So I've put together just some soy sauce, some ginger, and a little bit of sweet rice vinegar, and I'm gonna add that. Ooh, and I'm just gonna splash it all over. I think it was Julia Childs that said, if you're not making a mess, you're not cooking. I'm gonna mix that together, and really, meal bowls, the fun of it, like I said, things are flying. The fun of it is you can do whatever you want. If you have a lot of participants, maybe you do it in a giant hotel pan and you just serve the bowl all mixed together. If you have fewer participants, maybe you put the bowl, as you've seen maybe on Instagram or Pinterest, where you've got each ingredient sort of lined up. It's all up to you. But that would be our first meal bowl. Easy, easy to plan, items that you would generally have. Let's see if we can see that on that camera. Hey, there it is. Serve it with your fruit and your milk, and you've got a reimbursable meal. That guy ran away. We'll put him over here. All right, but let's say the chicken doesn't come in, or it doesn't come in on time. So what can you do? Well, you have beef. Well, there's our meal bowl. If you have beef, maybe you can substitute the beef for the chicken and do the same thing. But let's say as you're thinking about it, you think, well, ground beef and noodles, that might be kind of hard for the kids to eat, or my participants might not like that, and you want to change something and pivot a little bit. I always suggest looking in your pantry to see what you have. And let's say maybe you have chips, whole grain tortilla chips, maybe you've got corn tortillas, maybe you've got everybody's favorite, whole grain corn chips. I will use no brand names here, but we all know what I'm talking about. So instead of doing Asian, maybe you decide and you take your beef, go into your pantry, grab those corn chips, and I'm gonna line this one up all nice and pretty. Add your beef to the corn chips, maybe a little bit of cheese. Who doesn't like cheese? And then again, think about those pantry items. You can open a can of black beans, maybe a can of corn, add that to your meal bowl. And you guys all know where I'm going with our flavor inspiration, I am sure. And this training is going to test my skills of clicking and talking and cooking at the same time. We're going to go with some tomatoes and then Mexican seasoning blend. So we're going to make this Mexican-inspired meal bowl, right? So we didn't have chicken. We decided not to go Asian. we pivoted, we were flexible because we had already planned and ordered things that would stay for a long time, potentially in our pantry, like canned goods or some of those dry goods. And we made our Mexican bowl, or maybe a walking taco bowl, right? So there we go. There we go. Really pretty. All right. But let's say you're really having issues in getting those protein sources like chicken and beef and those meats. And, or maybe you're seeing the prices of those items really skyrocket. You're working within a budget, as we all are, and you're trying to meet those price points and are unable to do it by ordering what you thought you would order, like chicken, beef, or maybe pork. I want you to consider our meat alternates. Often, I think we get pigeonholed into assuming that that meat component is really only a meat component. Chicken, beef, pork, even fish, right? But there is that other side of the slash, that meat alternate that we can use to meet that component. You may have heard of plant-based diets or plant-based eating. You may have received requests from participants for vegetarian meals. Vegetarian meaning there's no animal meat, but there could be maybe eggs or cheese. Or you may even have had some vegan requests. And vegan means there's absolutely no meat product. So no meat, no eggs, no cheese. The meat alternates are a really great way to create that reimbursable meal while still meeting meal pattern. And as supply chain issues continue, some of those meat alternates may be more readily available and maybe a little bit less expensive than their alternate meat, right? So before I talk about some of those meat alternate bowls, I know that Jenny has a poll that we'd like to launch about some of those plant-based requests.
Great, thank you, Jessica. Yeah, so our poll is, what percentage of your participants do you estimate request or prefer plant-based, vegetarian, or vegan meal options? Okay, I'm going to end the poll.
Hey. Wow, okay.
For most of our participants, it's less than 10%, followed by 10 to 20%.
Mm-hmm.
And then 4% of our participants today have 20% of their participants requesting these options.
Interesting. Well, I want to put it out there that even if you don't get those requests, these will still be good options when you're planning for flexibility. Again, some of these options may be more readily available because less school districts or childcare centers or organizations in general may be ordering them, so they may be more plentiful, or their price point might be a little bit lower. So let's look at a few different options. And I'm going to say the same thing for maybe some of your less used grain options. So I have some quinoa. It's a whole grain rich option, completely creditable on the meal pattern. So let's take some quinoa. We're going to add to that a meat alternate, edamame. Now, edamame is soybean, and in Food Buying Guide, a fourth a cup of edamame is equivalent to 1 ounce of meat alternate. So you could use a fourth a cup, you can use a half a cup, depending on your meal pattern. So I am going to add that, little beans there. And then, of course, we want to add some veggies. So I'm going to go with, oh, forgot my corn in my Mexican dish. Well, that's okay. You know what? I'm going to add it here. A little bit of corn and then some broccoli. All right. Clearly, I'm liking green these days. So we've got our quinoa, we've got the edamame, which is our meat alternate, which we're going to credit that for, some broccoli, and for this one, we're going to go Thai inspired. So you might add some garlic powder, some lemongrass, or you can include some of our middle schoolers, I believe, and many others' favorite seasoning, which is the sweet Thai chili. So you put that on there, mix it up, and make a really delicious, different, vegetarian, actually vegan meal bowl. And again, think about this planning as a bit of a plug and play, right? It's a puzzle. So if you don't have one of those pieces, what are you going to put in there to make that puzzle work? Let me move that over. There we go. There's our bowl. All right. I'm going to talk about one more meat alternate. It's tofu. And everybody screams and cringes when I say tofu. Okay. Tofu in recent years has become a creditable meat alternate, and I'm going to encourage you, if you have not, to give it a try with your participants. The one thing I am going to say about it is tofu is a sponge. It soaks up flavor, so you have to give it something to soak up. So you'll want to make sure that you marinate it in whatever your flavor profile sensation is going to be, or you can actually dust it with some spices of your choosing and bake it off, and that makes it a little bit chewier texture and then infuses that flavor into it. All right, so for this bowl, let's say we have some brown rice. Again, we've gone into our pantry. We've ordered some extra brown rice because we know we can use it. We'll have it on hand. We're going to use our brown rice. Our veggies for today are going to, or for this bowl, are going to be more green veggies, my favorite. Some asparagus and some spinach. And here it is. Asparagus and spinach. And I'm going to go with an Indian inspired flavor profile. And what I've done is I've taken, and I'm going to hold this over here so people can see it maybe. I've taken the tofu and I've marinated it in some curry and a little bit of broth to kind of make it liquidy so that it can suck up all of that flavor. So I'm going to put the tofu in there with my asparagus and spinach and my brown rice. And one thing I'd like to say is also consider that you do not have to meet a component's minimum serving size with just one item. So let's take this bowl. Let's say you've got tofu, and you're going to use that, but you don't want to put too much in because you have to meet 2 ounce equivalent, right? You want to put a little bit of tofu and you want to put something else. Maybe go with a legume. You can split up a component and still meet it by doing 2 different things. Maybe you add some garbanzo beans. So you've got the tofu and the garbanzo beans. You've got different textures, some different options, and you're still meeting meal pattern. I'm going to arrange this all beautifully so that you can see it on my little phone cam. And that's gorgeous. And it's another way to be flexible with your meal plan, utilize items that might not be in as high demand as some of those other things you plan for. You can still plan for those other things, but maybe keep some of these in your back pocket just in case. Okay, so I know we're already at 2:30 and we want to get to a lot more things, but I have a couple of other options to show you. Keep in mind that the handout in the packet is for you to use. There are so many other things that you can put in there as your plug and play options. You know, of course, other grains, other meat or meat alternates, and endless possibility of vegetables and flavor inspirations. But those are lunch and supper. So we want to talk about, can you do this for other meals? Can you do this for breakfast? Well, of course you can. So let's look at some really quick options for meal bowls for breakfast. All right. feel like I have like a little Italian flag here. I am Italian, so that works. I think that might be in the wrong order though. So we're going to say we have some quinoa left over from that meal we served yesterday or the day before that, right? And we want to use that up. One thing when we're in shortages, we all know we want to make the most of what we have. So we want to make sure we're using leftovers. Don't be afraid to do, lunch for breakfast or breakfast for lunch, whatever you have. For this bowl, we're going to take our leftover quinoa. We're going to add a little bit of protein with some yogurt, all right? And we're going to add some fruit through our berries. And that's another great thing that we can do. I know fruit was a hard one to get. Maybe frozen fruit is easier. Maybe the supply is there more than it would be for fresh fruit. It will definitely last you longer because it's in the freezer. So think about maybe using frozen fruit for items, especially for breakfast, because you can definitely get away with that. Put these delicious berries in. And then for our flavor, I've added a little bit of lime juice and a little bit of maple to the yogurt to give it kind of a zing. And then we have a delicious, I'm going to take my grapes away because we've got our fruit, a delicious breakfast bowl that we can do using up our leftover quinoa, using some frozen berries, adding a little flavor inspiration to our yogurt. It's gorgeous, and hopefully whatever bowl you put it in, it's portable and the kids or participants love it. Something else you can do. Let's say you want to do breakfast for lunch. That's always a popular one. Maybe you have a whole grain biscuit, you do some ham and egg, some potatoes, maybe some tots. You know where I'm going with this, a tot bowl. A little hot sauce, sriracha, who doesn't love that? And you've got a delicious breakfast for lunch. There it is. We talked about our quinoa bowl with our berries and maple and lime. Delicious in that too. And then one thing that is always pretty popular, not too hard to do, is overnight oats. Make it the day before, put it in the walk-in, serve it the next day. So you have your oatmeal, which I think actually National Oatmeal Day is like the 29th of this month. You could celebrate National Oatmeal Day. You've got your milk and yogurt. You can add some fruit, maybe some bananas, flavor it with some peanut butter. And then I always say add a little crunch with just a little bit of granola, and you've got another delicious meal bowl. But you can interchange many of these things. And that's not really a bowl. We'll call that like a cup bowl, a high bowl, a tall bowl. But you get where I'm going. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about for meal bowls for breakfast are smoothies. And smoothie bowls have become more and more popular. The trend ebbs and flows. You can definitely do it in your schools. I would suggest doing it in what we're calling our tall bowl, right? One of the smoothies that has been super popular in our culinary trainings is from Food Hero. Our friends at OSU Extension have amazing recipes, really easy to do, minimal ingredients. We'll include the link in our follow-up email. But one of the favorite smoothies is the Popeye Smoothie. Probably you can see it's Popeye because it's green, and yes, it does include spinach, but it also includes orange, pineapple, banana, really tropical flavors. So my suggestion, pull out a, Popeye smoothie. This is great for when those bananas have maybe tipped over the edge and kids don't want to eat them whole. It's a great way to use that up. Or throw them in the freezer. And the next time you make the smoothies, it will add a nice texture, a thickness to that smoothie. You're still going to use those up. And then to this, I always suggest, as I mentioned, a little bit of crunch. So you're going to add some of that granola, and you can either let them do their own. So give them little containers of these items, and they can create their own little, we'll call it a smoothie bowl or a tall smoothie cup. Put that in there. And then because we're going with tropical, I'm going to get real fancy and add a little bit of shredded coconut just to zhuzh it up a little bit. You see that? You see that? Oh, look at this. Look at this. She can't even get to the camera. There it is. There it is. Really fun. I mean, wouldn't that be great for Halloween? Green and ghoulish and just lots of fun to do. All right. So that's a lot of me yammering at you. But really what we want with all of this is to help you think about how to plan to be flexible and what you can do with that. What we also would like to do, I mean, I have not been in a kitchen in a school district or in an organization for about 7 years. So both Jenny and Chris, as I mentioned, were food service directors more recently in school districts. And they've put together some information that Chris is going to share with you when thinking about how to navigate some of these challenges that we're dealing with. So I am going to turn it over to Chris to walk through this. Chris, take it away.
Thanks, Jessica. All of those bowls look delicious. Now I'm really hungry. Thanks. So Jessica asked Jenny and I to kind of put our heads together to think of, but way back when, it seems like forever ago, not nearly as long as Jessica, but when we were directors in school districts, and some of the challenges I know were probably very minimal for us as they are for you right now when it comes to supply chain and the challenges that come with that we're experiencing. I think we've all been to a grocery store through this whole COVID pandemic and seen shelves with signs on it that says, please take 2 or bear with us, our shelves are empty. Warehouses, they're struggling to find employees, as we are too in our own school districts, to find staff to help cook and serve these wonderful meals for our participants. So as Jenny and I kind of put our heads together, we had to kind of think back and what did we have in our toolbox? What were some of the things that were our go-tos and things to consider when we have a delivery that is either late, it didn't meet our deadline, and we needed that item for the item that was on that delivery for that day's meal, or maybe they were shorted, or maybe the item got discontinued altogether. So just kind of some examples that we experienced, and we came up with a pretty short list of. And this is not inclusive of all of the approaches that you could take, but just some helpful reminders more than anything. So the first one is, it's always a great idea to know what's in your inventory, know what's in your pantry, like Jessica says. You want to know what you have available to you if you need to make a last minute change. And by having that knowledge of what items you have in good supply, it's going to allow you to make those last minute changes on your menu more efficiently, rather than taking the time to go in and sort out an inventory in the heat of the moment when you're trying to figure out what you're going to cook for that day's lunch or breakfast, whatever it may be. So first one we would say is just have a really good understanding of what you have inventory wise in your supply. You might want to also identify what foods are not in short supply and leverage those, right? What I recall is we would always have what I always called the emergency bag of chicken nuggets in our freezers. So if we ran out of food, or if whatever reason we were shorted food, we always had a go-to bag of chicken nuggets because we knew kids generally like those when we offer them on the line. So know what you have again in your inventory, and then if you're getting items regularly, try to leverage those items because you'll have more of those on supply. The next one that we thought about was consider reducing weekly variety. What we've heard is menus have changed from years of past where there's been lots and lots of variety just due to what you could get in through your suppliers. So you might have to reduce a little bit of that weekly variety that you typically offer. Some menus we've heard have gone in secondary schools from offering 4 different main items to narrowing it down to 2. You might be a kitchen that is just doing grab and go. So that really limits what you can do variety wise, or if you're doing portable meals, delivering them to classrooms, all of that, those typical scenarios may affect the amount of variety that you can offer in your menu. One response that we got and we heard of recently was maybe when you are doing your menu planning, maybe it's not feasible to do a monthly plan. Maybe you need to move that to a bi-weekly. So you're doing it 2 weeks at a time because that menu is changing due to shortages that you're seeing in your supply chain. I saw a great comment in the chat earlier of folks are now ordering out and they're providing more lead time. So they're maybe ordering a month out for next month. So they're ordering early. So that way they're assured that they're going to get those products for the menu that they're trying to plan. So making those adjustments and how you look at your menu planning might be helpful and taking different approaches. And the last area that I want to bring up today is it's probably one of the most important things is just communicate. You want to try to communicate with your staff who are trying to prepare meals and are looking for those items when they're getting ready to cook for their students and participants. And even with that communication, you want to communicate with customers. You know, those customers could be in the form of parents or students, any of your participants. And the reason why communication is key here is we've all been in a restaurant scenario, and this is a good example that I like to bring up and we've been in a restaurant and we've been sat at a table and you're waiting for somebody to greet you. You can look around and see that the restaurant's pretty busy, or maybe it's not busy at all, but we don't really understand the circumstance, what's going on behind the curtain when it comes to the staffing. Maybe they're short-staffed, any of those things. But I think what's important, what I recall and I appreciate as a customer in a restaurant is somebody telling me that, hey, I'll be right with you. I've got to do A, B, or C, or I've got to go talk to this table, or just let me know what's happening. And then it puts me at ease, right? So I get the sense of, oh, I'm still important. And they're going to be with me shortly. The same kind of concept really is generated with communicating with our customers. It is no new news that there's a huge supply chain issue. It's on the news, I think, every other night. As I receive emails from different sources, I see a new article wrote about the challenges that supply chain is experiencing, from products being on ships and containers that they can't get offloaded, and truck drivers that they can't hire enough of to deliver the products, to warehouse people that are loading those trucks to the shelves that are just empty. So there is a huge issue right now, and our hopes is that sometime in the near future we can get this shored up, so to speak. But I'd say communication with your participants, customers, staff, and even if you're in a school district, even the staff that may not be directly involved with preparing child nutrition meals, because they also hear responses, and they could be a great advocate for you when they're having those parent-teacher conferences or during pickup times. So it's just good to make sure that everybody's aware of the challenges that we're all experiencing. USDA just released a customizable letter that you can plug and play your organization in. And it's really designed to communicate to families about the issues that we're having with supply chain. And it really drives home that just be patient with us. We're doing everything within our power to make sure that we're feeding students and children nutritious meals every day. So I think that is a great resource. I know that the link is in this PowerPoint, but we'll make sure that that link gets out to everybody when we send out our follow-up email. We could open it up in the chat if there's anybody else that might have other resources or tips that we could leverage or hear about, what you're currently doing that's been successful in your organization when it comes to supply chain. And I'm just going to monitor that chat to see if anybody's got any. But Jessica, anything? Yeah, Jessica, anything else you want to add on that?
Well, not to add, but yeah, I would love to hear what people in the chat, if they want to type in what they've been doing. I know we saw that some deliveries have been not necessarily canceled, but delayed. And of course that puts, everything up on its end or on its head. And as Chris said, it really is about knowing what you have, planning for that flexibility, and communicating out to your stakeholders, because the more they know and understand, the more leeway or benefit of the doubt they're going to provide to you. So I think all of that is fantastic. So feel free to add your thoughts into the chat. And thank you, Chris, for sharing all of that information. Jenny and Chris, it's kind of funny because as a child nutrition specialist, I reviewed both of their programs at different times, and both were amazing food service directors. And so the information they're providing, they've lived it, they understand it. And, Chris did say, obviously, they weren't in that position during COVID. But again, as child nutrition program professionals, we understand and have always had to be flexible, have always had to have that ability to turn on a dime if needed. And so they've got that experience in their back pocket. So as people are putting things in the chat, thank you so much. We've got our spread, our meal bowls here, everything that we kind of put together from our plug and play planned menu of flexibilities. And I just want to sort of review what we talked about because it was a lot of information. Again, in that participant handbook, we've got recipes, we've got these amazing basic anatomy of a bowl handouts. Think about when you go back to your kitchens and your organizations, will this work for me? If a meal bowl, isn't what's going to work for you, can you use these concepts and how would you use them for other things? How would you work with your current staff to ensure that they feel empowered to make those changes, to be flexible, but still, know that they're staying within the regulations and the meal pattern and all of those good things that we try to do. Again, seasoning blends handout is in there. And we've also included some great information about beans, peas, and legumes, which are called pulses. Not really sure why they're called pulses. I know there's a history out there about it. I've read up on it, but still, they're beans, peas, and legumes. But there's been some great information that's come out about how to serve them, how to cook them, how you can incorporate them into your menus. Also, some basics of rice cookery, which is always great to know. And our general basics at a glance handout, which is probably one of our favorite handouts to provide in these trainings because it has really everything we need to know about measuring weights and volumes and scoop sizes, anything that you need to know. So after this training, we will, as we've mentioned, be sending a follow-up email. That will have the resources we've talked about, the links that may have been in presentations, some links to information that we have found useful some sites with recipes, some other information, our organizations. Also, we are going to post in the chat before we leave an evaluation. We'll also include it in the follow-up email. I would like to put a huge plug and ask you to please complete that evaluation. That information that you provide about how you enjoyed the trainings or what you think we could do differently or topics you would like to hear is really going to help us as we start to plan for 2022's series of culinary trainings. And here's the bonus. If you complete the evaluation and include your name and address, you will receive one of these lovely aprons. I will say it has 3 pockets, which are always great to have in the kitchen, as well as a portable milk cooler from the Dairy Council. Thank you for that. Really, the purpose is we just want to learn from you how we can better serve you in these trainings and what you would like to see. So with that, I'm seeing things come through the chat box, lots of good information. I want to just pause for a minute and see Crista or Jenny or Chris if there are any questions that have come through, or if you want to share out any of the information that you've seen through the chat.
Yeah, so we had some great suggestions in the chat on what people are doing to pivot due to supply chain issues. Definitely people have their go-to items in their inventory that they can lean on. Some of those items suggested are, let's see, those go-to items, mac and cheese, always a kid favorite.
Yeah, and adult favorite.
Absolutely. I've never known a kid that complained about mac and cheese being on the menu. Vegetarian chili, bean and cheese burritos, great use of pulses and plant-based meat alternates there.
Yeah.
Soup, that is a great idea. That is one of my personal go-tos. And you know, I take the ends of vegetables and leftovers and I freeze them in Ziploc bags and then I use them in soup. So that is a great way to, you know, pivot and use what you have in your pantry. We have Charlene here says that they distribute out to other sites and sometimes they make changes to make sure that products don't go bad. And I think that's an excellent strategy right now because we cannot be affording to waste food when the supply chain is so lean.
Yep.
So use everything up. So thank you for pointing that out. And then veggie broth from all the scraps.
Yeah.
That. There was a question that came up earlier in the chat, and the question was, can you use edamame as a vegetable? And the answer is yes, you can. If you're on the National School Lunch Program, then the subgroup that it fits into is the legume group. You can also use it as a meat alternate, but not in the same meal. So when you menu that, you have to make the choice if you're going to count it as a vegetable or a meat alternate.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. Same with if you're on the CACFP, you can use it as a vegetable or you can use it as a meat alternate. So it's definitely up to you. You can use it for both. If anyone has a question and they would prefer to, you know, unmute themselves, I think you can. If you want to share something, you're welcome to use your voice and shout out loud. If you want to add your comments or questions to our little session here. So,
and it looks like Rena has her hand up.
Oh, okay, great.
So let's see, Rena, can you unmute yourself?
Okay. Oh, I think I saw it for a second. Maybe not.
I was just.
Oh.
It's not staying unmuted, but
Oh, there you go. I hear you now. Uh-huh.
I was wanting the links. There's a lot of good links and information. If you could email those out as well, that would be great.
Absolutely. We will make sure to get all those links in there, especially what's been put into the chat. I know there was a question about saving the chat, so we can do that as well. So we will send that all out to you. Okay, so without any further questions or comments, I just want to say a huge thank you from all of us, again, for joining us for this session. We've really enjoyed it. Clearly, I have a lot of eating to do after this. But again, please fill out that evaluation. We'll be planning for 2022. And so if you're interested in being part of our culinary trainings, maybe presenting something that you do in your organization or your kitchens, please reach out to us. We would love to know, because we always like to include some peer-to-peer information so that others can see what's really going on in the kitchens, and maybe not just in my home kitchen, though I did decorate for all of you, and I hope you enjoy it, my little Halloween and harvest decorations. You can also access the first 2 culinary trainings on the Oregon Dairy and Nutrition Council website. We'll include a link in that email so that you can see those if you weren't able to attend. And also that will include the participant handbook for those sessions as well. So from all of us, again, thank you so much. We hope you have an amazing Thursday. Happy harvest, and hope you enjoy planning for flexibility this year. That's our new word. Let's be Gumby and let's be flexible. Everybody have a great day. Bye.